Today's podcast is a chat with entrepreneur Chad Price. He's got multiple successful businesses, has written a best-selling book, and often speaks publicly about leadership and his successful sporting career. What I found really interesting about Chad was how he deals with the challenges in business and, let's be honest, the negativity that most of us face at some point in our working life. Chad sees it as the way that you would see the opposing team in sport, and I love the way that he describes it and how he turns it around and uses it for purpose. I hope you enjoy this chat because it was really insightful to speak to someone who's made a success of their business but really used that sporting insight. I learned a lot from Chad and I hope you do too. So Chad, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I'd said to you previously, when I looked at your website and I saw your story, you've got so many strings to your bow. What I wanted to start off by saying was, when you got into really becoming an entrepreneur and starting your businesses, do you think it was a simpler, not easier, but a simpler process because of your sports mentality?
I mean, I think I leaned on that experience quite a bit, but it was, I think it's going to be hard regardless.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think you just have to jump eventually. You get to a point where you're thinking about it, you start having kind of a little side hustle and, maybe investing some of your current earnings into whatever that is, but eventually you have to jump. So for me, that was going through corporate America and kind of rising that corporate ladder. And I realized, like, hey, if I really want to start my own entrepreneurship journey, I need to go ahead and jump now.
Yeah. And I can imagine with sport that you must develop quite a thick skin quite early because you'll be told when something just simply wasn't good enough. But in business, a lot of the time people don't want to be told that something's not good enough. So can you relate to that? Did you feel as if you had thickened that skin because you were used to being told that's got to improve, that's got to hit that target, you've got to be this, and you could apply it to business?
Yeah, and I didn't even realize it until I really started business that I was kind of numb to that idea, and that wasn't normal. Um, when you play sports, especially competitively, college sports, professional sports, after you practice, you go watch the practice the next day, and you only watch the practices to improve on the things that you did wrong. So 90% of that session is going to be watching things you did wrong. So you're usually watching yourself do wrong things the day after you did them every single practice. And for me, that became just a natural way to live and to kind of reflect on what you did, how you could improve on it. And for business, I think that's super helpful because it keeps you in the mindset of improvement. When other people might see, like, hey, we finally made it and reached our goal, it's like, no, we can still be bigger, stronger, faster. So how could we have gotten there a step faster? How can we do it double what we did last year and things like that? That comes all from sports and kind of my competitive nature.
And how did you decide to start your first business? When did you think, right, now is the time? Was it when sport was completely finished, or were you always thinking about it in the back of your mind?
Well, I mean, I always was thinking about it in the back of my mind. Even when I was young, I knew I wanted to either start my own company or work for, at a leadership position in some big company that I respected. So, for me, it was always an option. Um, Once I started going through corporate America jobs and really looking at what the next 20 years of my life looks like, I realized, like, hey, I can always have a corporate career, but it's not the same as starting my own business. So if I wanted to kind of see something through, a 10-year journey, 20-year journey, I needed to kind of start it earlier, especially if it was going to be something I owned.
Yeah. And I've started a few businesses in my time, and most of them were add-ons to my own self-employed business. But I've also had experience of working with others, and the differences are really obvious to me because when you're working for yourself, you call upon the advice in precisely the capacity you need it. But when you're working with others, there's got to be much more give and take and finding that middle ground. Did you feel when you started your businesses that you knew exactly this is my thing and I want to do it my way? Or were you open to working with others and you just decided to see how the land would lie? Or did you know, no, this has got to be my business and mine alone?
Well, I mean, I think that's where my kind of sports experience and maybe even my personal attributes come into play for me. I've always been like a team captain, point guard, leader on my team. I try to make whatever team I'm participating on a better team overall. And whether that's through, my physical athletic abilities or that's through morale and intensity and how we practice, how we train, things like that. So for me, that part doesn't really bother me. I more look forward to putting the team together that's really going to fight with me. Once I have that team together, it's just a matter of us getting more and more efficient at tackling obstacles.
That's a good way of looking at it because sometimes it's the frustrations that can stop a lot of people from developing their businesses. It's almost as if hitting the walls is enough to make them think, "Ah, I'm not cut out for this." Do you
Yeah,
think that you can change your mentality if you think it's too difficult? Do you believe that there's a way to actually toughen up and be able to maneuver through those challenges?
100%. And that's kind of what I talk about in my book when I say prepare for battle. I think a lot of people get stuck on having the greatest idea or having some new idea that's never existed before or, having some business structure in their mind that they think is going to set the business apart from other businesses. And I think it's really the mentality that changes to make people successful. It's kind of a perseverance and a grit that you have to develop in order to even have a chance at dealing with those kind of daily obstacles of entrepreneurship. When you play sports, you're kind of used to losing and winning and kind of getting up the next day and staying in the fight. But when you're a first time entrepreneur, maybe you don't have that background,
Mhm.
every day can seem like, 20 losses. And, people can't handle that if you're not mentally prepared.
And when I looked at the reviews for the book, they were excellent. How does that make you feel? Because was that your first book? That was the first one that you wrote?
That is correct. This is my debut, but
How does
it
that
won't be
feel?
my last, but
No, that's good. See, when you get all these good reviews for your first book, does that confirm to you that you've made the right choice? And even though you would know it was good, does it feel really affirming to know that other people agree?
I mean, I wish it felt that way for me,
Oh,
but for me, it's like nothing's ever good enough.
yeah.
Um, even that book, I'm glad it's got good reviews. Even if it had bad reviews, I still would be like, okay, what is the next book going to be, and how can I improve on it?
Yeah.
The experience of making it. What feedback can I take to make it better? So, if anything, the good reviews just gets me more excited about having more people to give feedback for this next round, and
Yeah.
hopefully, my next book is even better. And I think my goal would just to be to help people get mentally prepared for the journey and try to prevent them from dealing with maybe some of the stress and headache that I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. I suppose again that's back to the sports mentality that us I'm sporty but definitely not a sports person. And if I got a really good piece of news, I'd be like, let's celebrate, this is amazing. But for a sports person, you'll be like, right, well that was good. Now we're on to the next
Yeah,
one. So I suppose you're
yeah,
always building. But for us, we'd be like, yep, let's take a fortnight off just to celebrate because one thing went really well. But I was reading about your new business as well. So that is Life Grows Green. Yeah, is that correct? Could you
correct.
tell
That
me a
is
bit
correct.
about that? Because I've read so much about CBD and hemp, and I've had people on the podcast who are explaining a lot of the myths about it and a lot of the things that a lot of the general public still are a little bit wary, a bit frightened, or they get the wrong idea. So, how did that come about for you?
Well, through my kind of health and wellness journey personally, and with the business Kettlebell Kings, trying to grow that, we grew that into kind of a global brand that was full of kettlebell enthusiasts. And then we started another company, Living Fit, that
Mhm.
we were basically growing into something that's for general fitness, but we didn't have anything that's like natural supplements, natural products, natural lifestyle products. And I felt like it was a gap that was missing in my business portfolio, if you will. Plus, I think it's missing in America. I think there's a lot of misinformation about things like CBD and hemp, but really natural solutions, natural supplements, natural products that can replace commercial or processed options. So Life Grows Green is about really bringing out those people who really appreciate kind of replacing any commercial process, preservative based products and using natural solutions.
That's interesting because anyone I've spoke to this point, it's been maybe focused on the skincare side or maybe the not so much the diet, but maybe taking it in to help you maybe balance hormones. Are you coming at it more from the fitness and wellness side of things?
Well, I like to look at things like, I don't try to tell someone like this is better than that.
Mhm.
I try to provide natural options. And I think when you have natural options, you have the lowest amount of negative potential, period. So if something's not going to have negative side effects, I want to try to source that and get that to you as natural as possible. I think people use CBD, for example, in different ways. I think
Mhm.
there's controversial claims that people make that CBD can overcome, but then at the same time, I think there's a benefit to going on a health and wellness journey that replaces the processed things that you intake with natural things. So, I don't look at it as like a magic pill, but more of a company that sources high quality products for its audience. So if you're looking for hemp and CBD, we'll have the high quality of that. If you're looking for bed sheets, we'll have the natural high quality solutions for that as well.
And if any one of your particular businesses, when you've been starting them, has one been more challenging than the other? Or do you actually live for that challenge? Do you embrace everything's always got its difficulties, but do you actually embrace when you're starting off and you're like, right, hit me with it because I'm going to get over it and we're going to find a way around this? Do you just go for it?
I typically do go for it, but I mean, they all have had their just different challenges and, different times in my life. But Life Goes Green has been by far the most challenging. It's you're not just dealing on an even playing field, so it's not a competitive space to
Hmm.
advertise, to even sell your products. So when you're trying to find credit card processors, when you're trying to
Oh, yeah.
find a bank account, trying to advertise anything about your brand, you have to consider the stigma around CBD and the non-regulations that exist in the kind of gray area that every company is stuck in right now because there is no regulation.
And from a different angle, I can completely relate. When we had an online platform, when you were a small business, quite often they would change the goalposts and companies that you would use. I remember one being when we were doing card processing, and it's all secure, it's third party, so you're not dealing with anyone's information. But you would have a company that would be checking security to make sure it wasn't like a stolen card. And you
Mhm.
had it all set up, and it was, again, your contract was signed, and this is how much this costs, and this is how much that costs. And then one day your business is working great, and you get an email saying, yeah, we're not working with small businesses anymore. We're just, and you're like, well, that's everything just. I've got all my
Yeah.
plans, and then you're trying to find a replacement and you can't find a replacement. And that is so frustrating when you're running a business. So, do you find that when you're doing your talks, people might actually flag up to you? How do you solve problems? How do you not pull your hair out when something's going wrong? Do people often want to find out how you deal with your own sort of troubleshooting?
For sure. And, I look at all that stuff as just a barrier to entry for other people.
Yeah.
If they're gonna make me jump through 20 hoops to get to my location, I'll jump through the 20 hoops, and I know it's gonna be less competition at the end. So as long as I can navigate through it and keep seeing ways to keep moving forward, I don't let it stop me. Um, I think we are in a space where especially if you're like trying to, let's say, camp in CBD, for example, that's kind of led me to being an advocate for, regulating these things and having these things be a normal part of society and not stigmatized and kind of hurting every small business owner that's in this space.
Mhm.
Um, but I think at the end of the day, business is difficult, and it always will be difficult because it's kind of it is the most competitive playing field to me. It's like the natural playing field between every human adult on the planet. And I like the idea of that being difficult and that not being easy. And I think that kind of keeps strong quality leaders in places where you're trying to have employees, you're trying to change culture. I don't think that should be just something that's easy to do.
That's a really good point. And America is a huge market. With things like CBD, is it impossible to be able to export worldwide? Because I know that everywhere's got different regulations and different things. Or is that something that if somebody like myself in the UK, could we buy from you? Or is that something that has to be done one step at a time?
So you really have to do it kind of one step at a time.
Right.
And what you would have to do is, and one of the most efficient way to do it is kind of set up operations and manufacturers in each
Yeah.
jurisdiction. And even in America, you have to do that either under the legal limit of THC, which we do have those products. Those are
Mhm.
the products that are on our website. But each state has different limits. So you kind of just have to go with the most strict one, and then you can ship to all the states. But if you were really trying to serve your audience, you would have to set up operations in each state.
Right. That is honestly, that is the challenge. That's all the hoops that you're jumping through at the moment, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Um, do you get frustrated? Because I certainly do. When there's something that I know has worked for me, and you you always get people that will say, "I'll prove it works. I don't believe it works," and it's almost just like the wall, and they're not prepared to have a conversation. My favourite thing is when people say, "Show me the research," and sometimes. And I know that there'll be scientists that will like, oh, that's the problem. Sometimes you are your own research, so you know that something's worked for you, or you'll get people that are feeding back to you. Does it frustrate you when you're talking about the brand and you feel as if, again, some people are just brick walls, or are you happy just to say that's fine? You do your own thing because I've got my audience here?
Yeah, I think when you have been in sports and fitness, especially like me competitively, and then started a fitness company, you really see that, like, you can't win them all.
Yeah.
Like there's there's no negative thing in the kettlebell, and people still find something wrong with you being healthy and
Mhm.
lifting a weight that's made out of iron. Like I don't understand it, but I think you become numb to it, and it's like the opposing team yelling in the crowd. And
Yeah.
they're just saying nothingness. It almost fuels me because I know you're not on a positive journey if you've been saying these types of things. And I try to remain that positive example. And I've seen so many of those people go from, we say it all the time, we turn our trolls into our enthusiasts. And I think it just takes time. They want to break you down, and then they see another video, and they keep trying to find a way to say this isn't a good thing
Mhm.
until maybe it takes them 2 3 years, and they realize like, hey, there's nothing I can really find wrong with this, and maybe I should just give it a try because maybe it is a little bit of more happiness or a positive journey than the current journey I'm on.
I really like what you said too about seeing that as the opposing team. I think that's a great way to look at it. Sometimes it might be on, again, YouTube, you might get a comment and it's quite mean spirited. But if
Yeah.
you're willing to ask that person what they would have done or what they think, I think 9 times out of 10, they're actually happy that you asked their opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time, it's not just a complete negative, I don't like this. Sometimes they just want somebody to listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a good thing too. I'll give you an example, obviously, with the way our culture has changed with, the LGBTQ community, um, people genderizing themselves in general. Like, people didn't want men's and women's sets on our website. And at first, it was just a bunch of trolls, it seemed like, right? It seemed like a bunch of people just complaining, like, hey, guys, like, there are men, there are women. At a certain point, you say, okay, we're getting 20, 30 of these complaints a day or a week or however you want to measure that. And then you take that in consideration and maybe you make a strategic change. So
Yeah.
for us, it was just organizing the weights in a way where it wasn't gender based. And that solved a problem. And that started as something that may have been annoying, but it ended up being something that was more acceptable and or socially acceptable
Yeah.
for our fan base. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, is for us to all find some middle ground that allows us to move forward with whatever positive agenda the company has. And in that time, it was kettlebells and
Yeah.
your health and wellness journey.
And you can't underestimate the success of the kettlebell company. That's been huge for you, hasn't it?
For sure. It's my most notable company, but because I've started so many other companies, the lessons I've learned from that are just that's kind of just public facing.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time I started a nail salon at the exact same time I started the kettlebell company, and having those two perspectives
Oh,
for
yeah.
8 years, that was super helpful in my professional experience.
I bet that was. And what you said there was really interesting too, because you had a situation where you had the customer feedback being handed to you. You weren't asking for the feedback, they were giving you the feedback. A lot of people would pay a fortune to find out what they can provide for a customer, and you took note instead of seeing that as people making life more complicated, which at first I can understand why, because you'd be like, oh, we've already got this and this, why do we need an extra thing? But you took on board the customer feedback that was being offered to you free of charge, and you did something about it. So surely that, to me anyway, says that that's your entrepreneurial brain listening. When something's being handed to you, you are willingly accepting it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for me that comes pretty easy as well because of just my background in sports. I'm always looking for ways to improve.
Hmm.
So I use the audience and the community as a huge, reflector of what I'm doing and how well I'm doing it. When we got into starting the company, we were not like I was not the person to say this is how you design a perfect kettlebell. I learned that over a journey and hundreds of iterations of products and talking with coaches from Russia, talking with, the world champion, working with organizations that genuinely do this for decades. Culmination of all of those conversations is what leads to a product. And, I see myself as the leader of a community that, I have to provide the highest quality, and I'm like, quality control, new product development 24/7 for just continuing to build out better and better or additional products.
It's very inspiring. Have you got more plans? Are there always ideas brewing that you think, right, maybe not now, but that's getting stored for the future? Is there always something in the brain thinking ahead?
Oh yeah, 1000%. Like, yeah. I mean, I have too many company ideas, not enough brains and hands. And if I could split myself, if this was the multiverse, I'd be doing a lot more.
Maybe that's the next business then, if you can do that.
Yeah, yeah. If I could somehow copy myself, yeah, AI chat,
That's
he can
it.
start three different businesses at once. That'd be awesome.
Well, Chad, it's been really inspiring talking to you. I can understand just this 25 minutes talking. I can understand why you do what you do and how you're getting there. If anyone wanted to connect with you, are you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at Real Chad Price on,
Hmm.
Facebook, Instagram, and then just Chad Price on LinkedIn. You can also find all my social links and my book, link to my book on my website, chadprice.com.
Excellent. It has been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is AI Chad next. Would not be
I
surprised.
am integrating it as fast as possible. So who knows? If I can get it done, I will.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.